Welcome to Jamie TV, 100% live on YouTube. Thank you very much for tuning in. I will be continuing with my Cubasis 3 workshop, answering questions put to me by users and trying to solve a couple of little problems. And I will also be throwing in some of my own tips. Could have made a cheeky joke there, but I resisted it. All right, so thank you to people in the chat. Hi Grant, thanks for joining us. Hi Chuck. Chuck says it's lunchtime in California. What are you having for lunch, Chuck? And hi Sam and Maz, thanks for being here. Right, so I am going to just go over to this view over here. And I'm going to show you something. This is something that has cropped up loads and loads of times. I look after a couple of the Cubasis groups on Facebook, and this is a problem I've answered and solved for people many, many times. The metronome problem, right? So here's the thing. I'm just going to scoot over to after my project here. We'll take loop off, and I'm just going to start the playhead here. Now if I put the metronome on, okay, so we have a lovely metronome sound. Now what some people have had a problem with is the disappearing metronome. So what's happening is that activating metronome up here and pressing play or play and record and getting no sound. I'm going to explain why this happens, but the first thing to do, the first thing to check, jump into your setup, because I mean, you know, not everybody realizes this, but in setup we have a page for metronome sounds, which are incredibly useful. First of all, we have a volume for the metronome, and it can go incredibly loud. I mean, that's only just over 50%, and it's, you know, it's already too much for me. Hi, Midnight Bandit. Thanks for being here. Yeah, things are going well so far. I haven't had any stupid hippie moments yet, but there's plenty of time left to go. Right, so we have a volume for the metronome, and this is useful, of course, because, you know, when you let's say if I'm recording my guitar, right, I want to be able to hear my metronome, but I don't want it to be like so loud that I can't hear my guitar. And it's just nice that we can balance that here. Another thing that's really useful is you can pan the metronome to one side or the other. So if you're listening in stereo, and this is something that I do a lot because I tend to pan guitars hard left and hard right. If I've already got them panned and I'm laying down, you know, a new bit of guitar, and I've got the guitar panned all the way to one side, it's kind of helpful to be able to pan the metronome the other way, so it's not obscuring the guitar part that I'm putting down. So there's another really useful feature there. Now these two features here I am not going to talk about right now, because they will be included in something I'm going to talk about in a future stream. Yes, I actually have some of this planned out, and it may be unbelievable, but I do. Hey Audible, thanks for being here. Came here for the Jamie and for a break from the world's insanity. Love you too, Audible. Although I'm not sure that this is a suitable place to seek refuge from sanity, but you know. Now another thing you can do with the metronome is you can change the sound of it. Now I have it set to the default Cubase sound because I'm a Cubase user of old and I'm just used to that sound. But we can change it. I'm not going to go through all of these sounds, but you know, there's a bunch of different random sounds. And the reason I think this is more than a gimmicky thing, I think this is actually a useful thing, is because I've had a problem a number of times when I've been recording my guitar, because I'm a little bit deaf. So this means that I tend to have my headphones pretty loud. And if you've got your headphones loud and you're playing a guitar, and the pickups in an electric guitar are essentially microphones, really, the guitar can pick up the sound of the metronome through your headphones, because, you know, listening to that kind of a sound, right, it's kind of piercing on purpose so that you can hear it above all the music. And what's happened to me a number of times is when I've been recording a nice, clean, pretty bit of guitar, is that my pickups have picked up the sound of the metronome from my headphones. So of course you can turn it down with this volume control here. But another thing that you can do is you can select a sound that's maybe not quite so piercing and not going to be picked up by the pickups quite so easily. Pleasant insanity. That's a nice description. Okay, but I'm going to go back to the Cubase sound because that's what I like. Now, here's the source of the problem. If everything in here is hunky-dory and as it should be, and you're still not hearing the metronome, this is what the problem will be. If you go to the mixer, you will see down here there is a metronome icon. Now, I'm not really sure why this exists. I'll be honest. I mean, I may just be being a stupid, thick hippie, and, you know, it would not be the first time. You know, it's well known that I am not the world's brightest person, but I can't see why this button exists. It just leads to confusion, because if you've accidentally caught this button and you press play, there is no metronome until you switch this back on here. Now, I've had people in the Cubasis groups saying to me, my metronome disappeared, there's some terrible bug in Cubasis 3, I had to re-download, reinstall the app in order to get my metronome back. Well, you didn't. All that's happened is you've accidentally pressed this button, probably haven't even noticed that it exists, and because you've reinstalled the app, it's reinstalled from its default setting, which of course will be with this little metronome button switched on. Sam says, if you have multiple outputs, you can route the metronome to those. Yes, I suppose if you were using a multiple output interface, yeah, maybe it could be useful then if you wanted to just route it to one of them for live use, because some people like to use tracks live and have a click that the audience can't hear, but you can hear it on stage or in your in-ear monitoring or however you want to route it. So I suppose it could be useful for that, but I don't really think of a digital audio workstation as a live use app. But, you know, I guess, yeah, Sam, there might be a reason for that there. But anyway, so that is the cause of the disappearing metronome problem. That was tip number 1. Tip number 2 is a really, really simple one. But it's something that I've realized not everyone knows. Because, right, if you select a region, right, let's say I want my project to loop around my middle bit, right? So in my middle bit, because, you know, every track has to have something called the middle bit, which is here. If I select this region here, just press and hold on it, Cubasis 3 will put the loop on, and it will put the locators to either side of that region, which can be very useful if you know that that's what it's meant to do. But the problem is that some people don't really know that's an intentional thing, and when they're moving stuff around in the timeline here, then what happens is they accidentally press on a piece of MIDI or a piece of audio for too long, and Cubasis does this thing and it seems like it's a fault. Now I have to say, Steinberg have adjusted this, because when this feature first appeared, now was it there when the app first came out? It may have been, I'm not sure. But anyway, originally, this feature, you really didn't have to hold a piece of audio for very long at all, and it would do this loop thing, and it was too sensitive, and it used to really piss me off all the time. And but it has been adjusted, and I've not found it to be a problem since. Let's just go to that view there. That might be helpful. All right, so that's tip number 2. Right, done. Simple as that. Hey Mars, thanks for being here. Right, now here's a thing that I get asked quite a lot. Right, why isn't there a marker track in Cubasis 3? Well, it is one of the popular requests. It's not one of the top few requests for future features that people would like to see added, but it is a popular request, so we may very well see it at some point. But I would possibly argue that it's not really necessary, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you why it's not necessary, and I'll show you my little workaround. Hey, Square Breaker, thanks for being here. Now, if we go to my, let me just zoom in a little bit. I'll make it bigger, missus. Right? You see, I always have my drums at the top of the project, and my drums are always red because I have colours for things. This could be a tip as well. I always have the same colours for the same kind of instruments, because that way I can look at my project from, zoomed out, and I can see where everything is immediately. So guitars are always blue, and drums are always red, and synths are always green. And I would like it if pianos could be white, like I do in Cubase, but there is no white in Cubasis 3 for some bizarre reason. Now in this project, things do detour a little bit from that colour scheme, because I just wanted to, because there's no guitars or real bass in this project so far, and I just wanted to separate the colours out a little bit for viewers. But here we have my drums at the top of my project, and they are red. And if you can see this, if I zoom in, you'll see that I have labelled the first chunk of MIDI drums there. I've labelled it first one. Maybe if I just go to this view for a moment, it might be a bit bigger for you to see. Right, so this is what I do with my drums. Once I've kind of, got all the drums in there that I want, or I'm getting close to it, then I'll chop the drums up into MIDI sections that represent verse, chorus, next verse, chorus 2, middle bit, etc. And then I just go in and label them. Now, if you don't know how to label those MIDI sections, yeah, I do Audible. Yeah, that is the way I do it. Then in a moment, you'll see exactly how to do that. Right? So let's say you want, I want that view. Right. So let's say you don't want to do that with your drums. You don't want to work that way. You want to have an actual marker track. Because to me, if Steinberg do add a marker track to Cubasis 3, I would say for a digital audio workstation for an iPad or iPhone, you've got to be careful how many features have to be on screen at once, because we only have a certain amount of real estate to play with. So if they do add one, I very much hope that it will be something that can be switched off, or is easy to just pop on and off when you need it. I just don't want things that I don't necessarily really need taking up screen space. But we could do this, right? So I'll select here, and I'll go to add MIDI track. Then I'll just drag this one up to the top, because it's going to be a marker track. Now I'm going to label this. I'm going to label, oh actually, hang on. It's automatically added the instrument that was on this track here. I'm just going to go in here, and we'll just go back through the folders and select no instrument. Okay, now I'm going to label it, and I'm going to call it marker track. Okay, now let's say I want to set a marker track position for my first verse. Right, so I'll press and hold on this chunk of drum MIDI here because that's where verse 1 is, and then I'll double click here and I go in with a double click and I click up here where it says marker track, and then I was going to type on my computer keyboard then. Does anyone else do that? Because I do it all the time. Verse, if I can remember how to spell, verse 1. And OK. I'll come out of there, and now you'll see that's been labelled verse 1. Now, I'll press and hold on my first oh dear, my first chunk of drum MIDI for chorus 1. And now I'll click here, go into this one, and I just type in chorus 1. Now what I can do with this that's quite nice is, while that empty MIDI part there is selected, I can go to colour and I can make it a distinctly different colour from the verse. So we'll choose a pink. This, of course, is one of the things that is a bit of a nightmare in Cubasis and in Cubase and some other DAWs as well. If you have a MIDI part selected and you go to choose a colour, it will change the colour of just that part. And of course, 9 times out of 10 what you wanted to do was you wanted to change the colour of the whole track, but because you've got a chunk of MIDI selected, which may not even be on the track that you're wanting to change the colour of, it just changes that chunk of MIDI or audio. So always remember, before you go to change the colour of your track, click off of all MIDI or audio parts and then change your colour. Alright, so I don't need to go all the way through that and complete a full marker track. You can see from that what I'm talking about and how you could actually set yourself a marker track up. Of course, it will always remain the same size as all of your other, didn't want to do that, all of your other MIDI and audio tracks. And one thing you can't do in Cubasis 3 is you cannot make one track bigger or smaller and not affect all of the others. They will all always be the same size. That's something I think would be nice to see that possibility introduced in an update soon. And it would be really, really nice if we could have folders, so that if, let's say I've got 8 guitar parts on a guitar group track, I'd like to be able to just press a folder button and compress all those guitars down into one folder. So again, we're saving real estate on the iPad screen. You can do that in Logic Pro, and it's one of the features of Logic Pro for iPad that I do really, really like. That is really, really cool. Anyway, so moving on. I'm looking at my list. I've not got my glasses on. Right, Midi Learn. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of this marker track because I've shown you how to do it, and I personally don't want it. If you want to delete a whole track from your project in Cubasis 3, you just go down to the bottom here and select delete there. Right. Oh yes, Midi Learn. Right. We need a keyboard. So if I just go to this view here for a moment, here's one of my controller keyboards. I've got quite a few now. Made a video on this one. I think this one is a particularly good one for iOS users. A little tip for you. If you just plug the data transfer cable into your keyboard, so the other end of this is going into my iPad hub, then that will attempt to power it as well as do data transfer. Some keyboards have a port for for you to collect separate power. This one is a cable that is just plugged into the mains at the other end. So if I plug that in first, now that's mains powered, and when I plug this in, it won't draw any power from my hub. If you plug that one in first, then you plug this in, it will have absolutely no effect. The power will still be being drawn from the hub. Hey Yellow Eyes, thanks for being here. Why doesn't Cubasis Midi Learn AV3 and hardware controller, Jamie? I am going to talk about that in a bit. We'll be covering that as I go along. Now, I want to go to this view here so you can see my keyboard and you can also see Cubasis 3. So yeah, stay tuned, Yellow Eyes. I will be talking about some of that stuff as we go along. Now, I have a controller keyboard and I want to map it to some stuff in Cubasis 3. Now, this keyboard has transport buttons, it has pads, and it has keys. And it has some turning knobs and the usual strips for modulation and pitch. I'm not going to go to town on this too much. I'm just going to map a few things just so I can show you how it's done. Because apparently some people are struggling with this stuff. So what we do, we go to setup. Actually, let me just sort of, shall I just select an instrument to use it on? Let's just, well, no matter, I can do that later. Right, so I'm going to go to setup and I select MIDI. And then here we have Midi Learn. Now, there is a bank here for presets for certain popular controllers, which, you know, if you have one of those controllers, then great, all the mapping's already here for you. But if it isn't, go to Learn, and you will see that in Cubasis 3, everything that can be mapped will be outlined in a lovely green. So you select the thing that you want to map. I want to select my play button. So I press play, I press on it, then I press play on the keyboard, and that is now mapped. So we'll do loop, and we'll do rewind and fast forward, and we'll do the record button. Now there's a stop button on my keyboard, but I don't need a stop button for Cubasis 3 because it's just a play button. You just press it again and it stops. So I'm going to use the stop button to switch metronome on and off. Now, let's go to keys, switch it over to pads, and now I'll map some pads. Right? Now there is actually another bank of pads on this keyboard. If I press knob bank, I've got another 8 to map, so I can map these as well. That sounded good. But these chords are in a different key, so I won't actually be using them. I'm just demonstrating. Now, what else can I show you? I'm going to, yes. If, by the way, you've already got anything set, anything already mapped, and you want to just wipe it and start again, there's a button here for Reset Midi Learn. And there's also, if you want to focus on just mapping one track, you can do Selected Track Mode and just map one particular track. So let's see, if I go to my mixer, you'll see there's just the track that is selected. That's the only thing it's possible to map. And I can, of course, move to a different one. I moved my pan then by accident. That's upsetting. Oh well, I can sort that out later. Right, so now did I mess up my mapping of pads by doing that? I think I may have done. Just go to here again. Right. I got distracted there. This one. Right, I'm going to exit Midi Learn. And now you know, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. Hey Mike, thanks for joining us. Now, what was the other thing I was going to show you? Right, yes. Okay. So if I go into Micrologue, and I want to do that on this particular instrument. Right, so here's my bass instrument here. Let me set up a loop around this first chunk of bass here. I'm going to switch my metronome off with my stop button. Right, so there's my bass. Now let's go into Micrologue. Now I can't remember if it was the last stream or if it was the stream before. I showed you in Micrologue where you could go in to find a master volume because it's not immediately obvious. We're going to take another look at one little bit of Micrologue again today in the filter amp section again. And we've got a question. But Jamie, why doesn't Cubasis expose AV3 parameters and of third-party plugins? Because they are automated when touched. So will Steinberg allow mapping of AV3 for Midi Learn third party? Well, I'm hoping in future that more parameters in more apps will become more exposed. That's a lot more. Now, I'm not sure whether this is entirely a Steinberg thing or whether it's partly, you know, third-party app developers, or whether it's a bit of both. I don't know. I don't know that much about development of apps. I just piss about with them. But I'm going to show you in a little bit something about that. So do bear with me. But for now, I just want to show you this. I'm going to just press play, and I'm going to have a little quick pissy pants around with the envelope, cutoff, and resonance in this instrument. Now you can hear there, it's possible with those controls, with this particular sound, the way it's set up at the moment, to get some of those squelchy, squeaky bass sounds that so many people love, which are featured in quite a lot of my cyber metal tracks. Now, the thing about that is, what you want to be able to do is to automate them. It's all right being able to make those sounds, but you know, you need to be able to make them move right with some LFO or something. Now, it isn't possible to automate anything in Micrologue with any of the Midi effects. I've had a good pissy pants around with it and I cannot make it do anything, but I have found some ways around that. So a lot of people wanted me to look at automation a bit deeper in these streams, and I'm going to do that in a moment. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Midi Learn, and go back to that instrument. Oh, I don't want selected track mode on. I want to take that off. Yeah, okay. And back to filter amp. Okay, now if I click on envelope and then I turn this knob here, you'll see that's now mapped. And we're going to map the cutoff and the resonance. These are the controls I would usually look for to pissy pants around with to create those kind of squelchy sounds. Obviously, you can see in this, you can see in Micrologue here, I could map loads of things. There's loads of things that I could have a whale of a time mapping more of the turny knobs and pads and stuff on my controller or controllers. I've got loads of them. And just, have a good old pissy pants around and make some great sounds. But, I just want to demonstrate this thing. So we've mapped 3 features. We'll come out of Midi Learn. And now you should see I can move these 3 controls. Right, now let me just play my bass. Now before I show you the automation thing, what I want to show you is, and this is not really so much of a Cubasis 3 tip, this is more of just a general mixing bass tip, because in all honesty, as a bass player, I think that the hardest thing in the universe to mix properly, to get just perfectly right in a mix, is bass. Bass, when you solo it and try and get a great sound, you get that great sound, and then it destroys your mix. Bass, if it's too quiet, your mix just doesn't move. If it's too loud, it can absolutely destroy everything. Getting it just right is hard. And the thing is, it's not usually about getting the volume right. It's about getting the sound right. Right? So, if I does Cubasis retain mapping? Yes, it does. It does. So I'm going to unsolo my track. And by the way, up here, we can unsolo and unmute up here. You don't have to go through all the tracks individually. So just listen to what drastic effect it has on how the bass sits in this mix as I just move these controls ever so slightly. See, it's not getting your bass to cut through your mix is not about adjusting the volume. It is about adjusting the sound. Hey, Mateus. All right, dude. Is that the new Delicate Giants? No, it's not. But the album does come out very soon. And I'm very, very excited about it because it's a great album. And Russ has been putting together some fantastic videos for it. It's going to be a really, really exciting thing to see at premiere. So anyway, right. So I've shown you that. Now, what I want to show you is how we can automate that. Because, lots of people want me to show you more about automation. A lot of people find it fiddly in Cubasis 3. I would argue that automation is fiddly in pretty much every DAW. And you just have to get stuck in and pissy pants around with it and make yourself keep doing it, and you just learn how it works in that DAW. Problem is, of course, in the next one it works slightly differently, and then it just gets real confusing. But anyway, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch read on, because when we've recorded some automation, we will want this channel to be reading the automation that we've written. And I'm going to, because if we want to make squeaky, squelchy bass noises, we're going to need to automate this because there's no other way you're going to get it into your finished mix, right? So I want to put right on, and then I'm just going to have a pissy pants around with these controls. Now let me just get that side camera view on, and we'll just, you know, I mean, my first attempt at it might be awful, but it just demonstrates it. That's all this is about. So I have to get my finger ready and then press play. We're crossing the streams here. Now, a piece of advice that I meant to give before I did that was to remember to take loop off whenever you're writing automation. And I forgot to take it off myself. So I've demonstrated it by, by screwing up, basically. Now, let's go. We'll take right off. Always remember to switch right off. And then we go to automation. And now it'll be easy to see down here where that automation has been written to. So I'm messed around with the filter cutoff, the envelope, and the resonance. So they're all listed down here. Let's just go in and look at cutoff. Right, so there you can see where I was pissy panting around with the cutoff. And if I click on resonance and envelope, you can see the level going up and down here. Right, okay, so now it's not the best, it's not the best automation that anyone's ever, you know, put in, but it's just for demonstration purposes. What I want to do is I want to show you some of these features up here. And just a little about putting in and amending automation and piss panting around with it, basically. So what we have is a whole bunch of controls. Now at the moment I've got select selected, so I'm in no danger of accidentally drawing anything in, and this will mean that I can grab a point and I can move it. Now I can make these little nodes snap to bar, as this is at the moment, or I can snap it to smaller, you know, divisions of the grid, or I can just switch it off. And that's what I usually do. I usually just switch it off and just kind of go freehand with it. Now it's much harder to move around with the mouse than it is your finger. I think it'd be nice if we had another peak somewhere around here. Actually, it's a bit shit, but you know, demonstration purposes. Now, here's the thing you can do. You see here, what it's done is, as I've moved that control, it's drawn in loads and loads and loads of nodes. While I've got select on, I can, possibly not with the mouse, oh there we go, I can grab a whole bunch of them, and we can simplify that down to a lesser amount of nodes, which will create a smoother transition. All I do is press reduce up here, and Cubasis will assess the situation and make a wise decision on what nodes are actually needed, usually. See, that works pretty good. Now, if we want to select a node and be able to only move it on the y-axis, right, so I select that, and can I do this with the mouse? I can. right? I cannot accidentally move it left or right. And of course, the same thing applies here for the x-axis. I cannot accidentally move it up and down. When you're pissy-panting around with these intricate little nodes, that can be incredibly helpful. Now, of course, if I just decide I want to start throwing some new nodes in, I press draw and just stick some in. This is probably going to sound dreadful. And I can select a bunch and clear them. If I remember to select first and take it off draw. To be honest, I think that's the most frequent problem people are having with automation in Cubasis 3 and why they're getting frustrated with it. Forgetting to take draw off. Right, I'm just going to clear a bunch there just to show that you can do that and then undo. Right, now I can erase. If I select it, right, oh hang on, do I have to take that off? I can't select erase, I wonder why that is. Maybe I can only do that if I select it. Right, I've got a couple selected there, let's try that. Yeah, okay, so you have to select what you want to erase and then you press erase. And of course we've got undo and redo and we have copy. Now, let's just have a quick listen to this. Right, okay, so I've made, you can loop a section and re-record that bit. Just not sure if I totally follow you, Audible, but just tell me if this next thing I'm going to say is what you're asking. So let's pretend that that automation that I've written in there is absolutely awesome. Of course it's not, right? But I'm going to double click here to select all the automation that I've written in. Then I'm going to snap to grid, snap to bar, go to here and press copy and paste. Right, so now I've got that exact same automation that I wrote in for the first 8 bars for the second 8 bars because it's the same part. Right, now what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go through all of my bass part and write in some awesome automation to get those little squeaks and get the bass to sort of become more prominent where I'm doing little runs and where I want it to stand out more, you know, but I'm here to demonstrate. I'm not here to work on my track. So yeah, it is cool, isn't it? It's convenient and it's cool. And another thing that you can do is, where is it? Is it? Oh, it's here. It's here at the top of the automation tab. Move with events. If you have that selected, then you decide to move your MIDI, then that automation will move with the notes it's supposed to be automating. If you don't have that selected, the automation will stay where it is, which is usually not what you want. So I think that's on by default, actually. Okay, now I'm going to move on from automation, but automation is something that as I progress with these workshops, I suspect I'm going to keep coming back to. There's a lot that I can show you, and so if I keep doing a bit here and a bit there, we'll get through it. Now, here's the thing. MIDI Effects. This is something that people don't even really necessarily know about or understand what it is. I'm going to need some MIDI to experiment with here. I'm going to duplicate this track. I'm going to drag it down to the bottom, which it apparently won't let me do with the mouse. And I'm just going to solo this track. Right, so my last chorus, if I click and hold here, right, and we can just loop around this section while I demonstrate this. Okay, so here we have a tab for Midi Effects. Now, Midi Effect is different than other kinds of AV3 effects. This is an effect which just operates on MIDI. Insert versus send. What do you mean insert versus send? I did cover whether you should use insert effects or send effects for effects. That was a great sentence in one of these streams previously. If you go and have a look at the other ones, the time coded, you can easily find the section that you're looking for. Okay, so MIDI effect. It's an effect that just operates on MIDI. If that doesn't seem to make any sense, if I just show you, it will make sense, I promise you. So what would a typical MIDI effect be? Right, we're going to go, yeah, I meant MIDI effects, yeah. Oh, sorry about the confusion, sorry. I may not have explained myself brilliantly, my apologies. Okay, so a typical MIDI effect might be an arpeggiator. So let's click here. Now I have a drop-down list of effects that are purely MIDI effects. I'm going to go to Rozeta Arpeggio there. Okay. Now, if I press play, I just want to turn this instrument up a little bit. Right. So, let's have a little quick pissy pants around with the arpeggiator. Right, okay, so that is where we would insert a MIDI effect. Now that arpeggiator, of course, is operating on some MIDI chords that I've already recorded in. Now I've had a lot of people that have been asking me questions, and these questions seem to come from a sort of an AUM kind of a state of mind. Because, of course, a lot of iOS musicians spend a lot of time pissy-panting around in AUM. And AUM is a great playground. I don't find it a great app for constructing a whole piece. I like a sort of a timeline, a linear door for constructing a full piece of music. But for looping stuff around, and I mean, you know, there is an awful lot of fascinating things you can do with it. I'm not putting AUM down in any way. I just think that it's great for some things. A linear door is great for other things. But a lot of the people that are asking me questions seem to be AUM fanatics that are wondering whether they can do certain things in Cubasis because they've learned how to do all this stuff in AUM. So let's just come past the end of my MIDI here. Now, yeah, I personally do find it terrible for making entire songs, but it is great for making demos. Right, so I'm going to get rid of Rozeta Arpeggio, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select Chord Bud. Right, so at the moment, what we have on this track, there's no MIDI already in. From here, I'll start at bar 150, right? There's no more MIDI. We're after the end of the track. And I'm just going to select some chords. We'll go C minor, and make that last for 2 bars. And then let's go with a F minor, make that last for 2 bars. So difficult with the mouse. And then let's grab a G minor, okay? And I'll make that one last for 4 bars. And then we'll loop that round. So back to the beginning. Now, I just want these to be playing on a higher octave. Let's maybe actually make that one on a higher octave, make this in version 1 and this in version 2. I think that might sound interesting. So, if you have become accustomed possibly in AUM to using note generators, chord generators, things like you know, the Gems Bud apps and the Rozeta apps and things like that. If you become accustomed to using those things and you want to know whether you can use them in Cubasis 3, yes, there you go, you can. You just put your instruments on your tracks and you put these kind of generators, these MIDI apps into the MIDI effect inserts, right? So now something I actually haven't tried yet is to record this into the piano roll. I'd like to say I know what I'm doing. I actually don't, but I see that there's a button here that says record to track. So I'm going to pull this down here, and will this just record to track? Can I do this with my keyboard? I'm going to press record. Oh, wait a minute. I've not armed my track, have I? I will need to arm the track. Let's arm that track and experiment. Let's see if this works. Right, okay, and as you can see, that has recorded to track. Now, I didn't really start it in the right place, so let's just trim up this MIDI a little bit. That's the chunk that I want there. I will press and hold on it to create a loop around it. Now actually, let me switch off Chord Bud, because then we know that we're hearing it from Cubasis 3 and not from Chord Bud. Right, so that does work. I learned something myself just now. That's very, very cool. I'm running out of time, but there's something very important I want to show you. So I don't want to delay, but I've got a question. Actually, is it permissible to ask Jamie? You can ask me anything, anytime. Why doesn't Cubasis launch Clip Sequencer in Cubasis? I don't want to drop other apps, but I mean, it does use other apps for examples. Could we see why? Clip Sequencer? I'm not entirely sure I know which app you mean. I may not have it. Is that one of Jem's apps? Just give me a bit more detail and I'll come back to you. And if this is something I need to get hold of and demonstrate or explain in another workshop, I will do. Right? But yeah, that was cool, wasn't it? We learned something. So I'm going to come out of there now. I'm going to replace in Drambo. Right, okay. Drambo, I have Drambo. I think Drambo is absolutely awesome. I don't use it an awful lot. It's the app I keep meaning to put some time aside and really nail so that I can use it in my streams, because obviously I've used it and stuff, but not enough. I will explore that. I will explore that for you, okay? And if you want to private message me at all and give me more detail and ask me, in sort of, longhand form rather than in the chat, I will look into that and explore it for you, okay? And come back to you. But for now, there's one more thing I want to show you before I go. So, what is it? It's a good job I've got notes because I can't remember what it is. Oh yeah, right, okay. Now this is really, really cool. Now, what I have to tell you, and I mentioned this earlier, but I cannot add an LFO app here in Midi Effects and Midi Learn that generator, if you like, to the parameters in Micrologue. That can't be done. I don't know why, but the way that if you're used to doing this in AUM, the way that you would do that so easily in AUM, you can't do that with Micrologue and Cubasis. Now, you can do this in Cubasis as long as the app that you choose, so the synth, for example, that you choose, if you can expose its Midi Learn parameters inside of Cubasis. Now, a lot you can't, but some you can. And I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't know what the reason is for this, if this is a Steinberg problem or an individual developer problem. I've been talking to Sam about this today, and I've decided I'm going to explore this more and find out more about it. I know that you can Midi Learn in Poison inside of Cubasis 3. I know that you can do it in the Swarm instruments. And I'm going to show you how this works in Animoog Z. Of course, what we could do with a list of the ones that allow you to do it and the ones that don't, and then we'll explore it, right? But before I run out of time today, I must just show you this. So let's go here. I'm going to set up Rozeta LFO. I'm going to switch it off for the moment. In fact, I can leave it switched on, but just deactivate all the LFOs. Now, I'm going to switch this instrument for, in audio units, I want Animoog Z. Right. Now let's get a sound that we like. That's pretty cool, but I don't want something that's as busy as that because I want the LFO to do busy stuff. So we'll go to pads and find something in here. That could be the very thing. This one. Now, what I need to show you is, let's make it all big again. Oh, I miss this. Now, let's just go back to the right. So this sound is called the meaning of, right? And some of you will know the joke. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to show you, if I click on MIDI, how we can map MIDI and then it will show me all the things. See all the green circles, the things that I can map controllers or LFOs or whatever to. I need to show you this now because when I also open up Rozeta LFO, this thing's going to be really small down here and it'll be difficult to see what I'm pressing. Right, so I'm going to bring this down here and open up Rozeta LFO, and for some reason I need to, anyway, not quite sure why that happened, but anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play. I'm going to switch on the first LFO and I'm going to press this. I'm going to map to these three things here. Press play. And you probably can't see, it's probably too small on the screen, but that is now mapped. You'll see what it looks like. I'll open it up in a moment. In fact, no, I'll do it now. I'll do it now. Right, so you see there's a number there inside of that circle to show you that that one is now mapped. What I need to do now is to deactivate that one. Activate this one. Press the second thing I want to map to. Press play. That's now mapped. Now let's do the third one. Okay. Now I can pissy pants around with these three LFOs, and I can make Animoog Z do stuff. I'm sure I could have come up with a better sentence there, but I'm just going to do it and you'll see what I mean. I forgot something. My apologies. I forgot. I've ruined it now. I've just got to redo this. Well, it'll give me a chance to show you this though. If I actually, is there a reset? No, there isn't. I just need to clear off these things that I've accidentally mapped. Let's just clear that. Right, okay. I'm just going to do that quickly again and then I'll show you what the error was that I made. Right, so we'll have this one active. We'll map it to there, press play. Mapped. Map this one. Map this one. Now, okay, what I need to do now is to come out of MIDI mapping so that we don't screw up again. And then Alright, so you can see how you can map your LFOs or your MIDI apps, all that kind of stuff, to any app that does allow you to map to those parameters inside of Cubasis 3. Now this is something I need to explore more because it's something I want to know more about. You know, I want to know what apps I can do that with, and I want to know why there are some that I can't do that with. And I'll get in touch with Steinberg about it and get some information from their end, and then we'll see what more we can find out about it. Let's try a different sound with this. That didn't turn out as well as I thought it was going to. I'm just going to try something here. Right, now come out of that mapping thing. Now that is not working as well as it was when I experimented with this earlier, and I've clearly done something wrong. I've clearly done something different than I did earlier when it sounded absolutely magical. So I may have to come back to this on a future workshop just to show you how I screwed up and show you what I should have done. Frustrating, very, very frustrating, because it sounded great earlier. It sounded great in rehearsal. There's something wrong with my MIDI mapping. Yeah, see, it's not mapped. And I don't know why. Let's just see if I can. It's not retaining it. When I press stop, it's forgetting it. Okay, I think it might have done it now. I had to take off MIDI pass-through and map them and then switch them back on. I'm sure I didn't have to do that earlier. Now it's working. There we go. So now, as I piss-pants around with the rate and modulation, etc. in Rozeta LFO, you'll see what it does in this visualizer here. Okay, so now it's working and I'm able to make insane and annoying sounds with it. Clearly, that just proves that I need to do some more learning about this, and this is an area I need to just explore much more deeply, which I will do, and then I will share my findings with you. There's a lot to uncover here. Why is it that these MIDI mappings can be exposed in some apps inside of digital audio workstations, and in some they can't, but they can in standalone, or they can in AUM? Why is that, and what needs to be done about it? So I'm going to do some more digging and some more learning, and that's it for today. Thanks ever so much for being here. Now, what I would really like you to do, I still have a long list of more questions, more things to demo for you inside of Cubasis, but keep them coming. Anything you want to know about Cubasis 3, then just keep on asking. I'll keep adding everything to the list, and we'll keep doing this until such a time as you are all experts on Cubasis 3. All right, so thank you very much for being here today, so that I don't have to sit here and do a stream to myself. Sitting here talking to myself might be a little disconcerting. Now, next week, because I want to keep doing this at the same time every week, because that way just everybody knows what's happening when. That seems to work for people, but next week I cannot do this time. I have a rehearsal with Graham Oliver. I have to do that. So next week, unfortunately, I'll have to move the time. So what I'll do is I'll arrange that, and I'll advertise it very well so that you all know. All right. So thanks very much for joining me today. Take care of yourselves and be good people and be kind. Make lots of music, and do try not to pissy pants about. I will see you all later. Bye bye.